Yes. Right.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم سبحانك اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وعنده مفاتح الغيب لا يعلمها إلا هو ويعلم ما في البر والبحر وما تسقط من ورقة إلا يعلمها ولا حبة في ظلمات الأرض ولا رطب ولا يابس إلا في كتاب مبين. Today we're going to talk, inshallah, about the conquest of Mecca, which is one of the highlights and one of the great, happy topics of the Sirah. I mean, the whole Sirah is happy, but you know what I mean. It's a very positive, point of finally there's this victory, and the way the victory happens is so moving. There are so many moving moments from the conquest of Mecca, and all of this is still in the shade of the Treaty of Al-Hudaybiyah. So we begin the story with how did the conquest of Mecca take place. One of the conditions of the Treaty of Al-Hudaybiyah is that the Prophet ﷺ agreed with the people of Quraysh that any of the Arab tribes in the domain between Mecca and Medina and beyond were free to join whatever side they wanted to join. So if somebody wanted to join Quraysh, they're free to join Quraysh. And if somebody wanted to join the state of Medina, to join the Prophet ﷺ, whether they convert or not is a secondary issue, but as a political alliance, they're free to do that. Khuzaa was one of the tribes that became Muslim and joined the Confederacy of Medina, the state of Medina. And Banu Bakr were one of the tribes that kept their allegiance to the people of Quraysh. When we began talking about the Sirah so many lectures ago, we talked about the period of Jahiliyyah, the period of ignorance. And one of the themes of the period of ignorance, one of the ubiquitous occurrences during that time, is that Arab tribes would fight each other generation after generation. And some of this Jahili tension spills into the period of Islam, spills into the period of the Sirah. And these tribes, Khuzaa and Banu Bakr, this was something that was sort of in the background between the two tribes. So one of the people of Banu Bakr, his name was Nawfal ibn Muawiyah ad-Daili. He left Mecca he left his area rather on the 8th of Sha'ban in the 8th year of the Hijrah, just to give you a sense of where we are in time. And he attacked Khuzaa. And he was supported by some of the people of Quraysh with weapons. Now technically, this is a violation of the Treaty of Al-Hudaybiyah, because we said that the treaty is that the tribes are free to join, and there can be no fighting. There was a moratorium on the fighting for 10 years, and this was now a breach of this contract, a breach of this treaty. The people of Khuzaa, they came to Mecca after Nawfal to seek justice, what's going on. And they're following him into the city of Mecca, they're around the Haram. And the people of Khuzaa are telling Nawfal, they're reminding them, your Lord, Rabbak, wake up, look at what you're doing. And then Nawfal, he said something that even for the Qurayshis was too much. He said, there is no God today. So the man is, telling him, calling him back to his reason. Like in our language, when somebody's excited and we say, Taqillah, remember Allah. So the person calms down. Or people are fighting and you say, Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. So everyone's supposed to stop and say, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So you calm down. This is one of those statements, trying to bring him down. And he's so enraged, he said, today there is no God. And he says this in the Haram, in front of the Kaaba. Now remember, the Qurayshis are polytheists. So there is a version of Allah for them, or God for them, surrounded by these other gods. A theology that we don't believe in. But so that was a big statement. That's way crossing the line. Not only is he violating the treaty, but now he's crossing the line. This is a crisis now for Quraysh. So Amr ibn Salim al-Khuzai, he left Mecca to go to Medina to inform the Prophet ﷺ of what has happened. He arrives there, he narrates to the Prophet ﷺ what happens, and the Prophet ﷺ says, we will give you victory. Meaning that the Prophet ﷺ is now acknowledging that the treaty has been violated, and now he has to defend his country. He has to defend his people, because this is somebody that has pledged allegiance to the Prophet ﷺ and pledged allegiance to the state of Medina. By this time, Abu Sufyan and the Qurayshis, they're freaking out, because this is not what they wanted. So they decide that they're going to send Abu Sufyan as a representative of Quraysh to go to Medina to plead with the Prophet ﷺ that they're not a part of this, that they did not endorse this, that this was a renegade group, that they apologize, whatever the case may be, but they want to hold on to this treaty because they've been whipped in the past by the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ, through revelation, knew that Abu Sufyan was coming. So Abu Sufyan sets out, and Abu Sufyan is very intelligent companion. Later he becomes Muslim, radiallahu anhu. So on the way to Medina, he encounters some of the Khuza'is that are returning from Medina. Because not one, but multiple people from Khuza'a went to inform the Prophet ﷺ seeking help. So he's trying to find out, where are these people coming from? So Abu Sufyan, he takes, the cow dung of the camel of the Khuza'is, and he looks in it to see the date seed. And by finding the date seed in the cow dung, he realized that these are the dates of Medina. So he realized and knew that these people are coming from Medina. So he puts two and two together. He's like, that's it. The Prophet ﷺ knows. This is a really bad situation. So the Prophet ﷺ knows that Abu Sufyan is coming, and now Abu Sufyan knows that the Prophet ﷺ knows what has happened. Abu Sufyan enters into Medina. He goes straight to the house of his daughter, Our Lady Habiba, alayhi salam, radiallahu anha, one of the wives of the Prophet ﷺ. And he goes to sit down, his daughter, he goes to sit down on a cushion, and she yanks the cushion away from him. And she said, this is the cushion of Rasulullah, and this is where the Prophet ﷺ sits. You're a disbeliever, you're najis, you're impure. So she yanks the cushion away from her father, and he says, I see, Islam has changed you. He's thinking to himself, this is bad. If this is my own daughter, this is the first thing that I encountered, I don't know what else I'm going to find. So he's a soft spot, somebody that he can hold on to, that they can intercede in front of the Prophet ﷺ for his cause. So Abu Sufyan goes to the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ ignores him. He doesn't say anything to him. Abu Sufyan is pleading his case, the Prophet ﷺ doesn't say anything. So then he goes to Abu Bakr, radiallahu anhu. He talks and he's pleading. Abu Bakr doesn't say anything. Of course, the same thing happens with Sayyidina Umar, radiallahu anhu. So then he goes to Imam Ali, alayhi salam, radiallahu anhu. So because Imam Ali, he is one of the people that has always been a connector between the people of Quraysh and the people of Medina throughout the conflict. So when he goes to Imam Ali, he finds there Sayyidah Fatima, alayhi salam, the daughter of the Prophet ﷺ. He's Imam Ali's wife. And Imam Hassan, who was at this point a child, playing in the house. So he is pleading with Imam Ali, pleading to help him. Please intercede, do something, do this, do that. So he says, Imam Ali was one of the most intelligent of the Sahaba. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Ana madinatul ilmi wa Ali babuha." I am a city of knowledge, and Ali is its door, is its gate. So Imam Ali was highly intelligent, highly astute. So he said, what did the Prophet ﷺ do? So he tells him. So what did Abu Bakr do? He tells him. What did Umar do? He tells him. He said, I don't think there's any solution for you. But why don't you go out to the mosque in public and say that I seek refuge with the people of Medina. The ijara that we've talked about in the past, the custom of the Arab is that you go to somebody for safe passage. So go and declare that you seek safe passage from the people of Medina. So Abu Sufyan said, do you think this is going to work? He's like, I don't think it's going to work at all, but I can't think of anything else except that. So Abu Sufyan, he goes out and he makes this huge declaration. No one says anything, and then he leaves. So he leaves, and the weight of the world is on him. He said, this is really bad. No one talked to him except Imam Ali. That's it. And whatever Imam Ali told him to do, Imam Ali said, I don't think it's going to work, but that's the only option that you have left. After this episode, the Prophet ﷺ, now we've entered already into the month of Ramadan, because the conquest of Mecca takes place in the month of Ramadan. Ramadan is the month of conquest. the Battle of Badr, the conquest of Mecca, and many of the other, even after the life of the Prophet ﷺ, many of the great battles of Islam and conquest take place in the month of Ramadan. So it's a special month in that regard as well. The Prophet ﷺ orders the companions to organize themselves and to march south towards Mecca. To cover his movements, the Prophet ﷺ sent a decoy of 80 of the companions elsewhere, so that the intelligence people that are gathering information, they would think that the Prophet ﷺ is going elsewhere. So the Prophet ﷺ, again, very astute, strategic, stratagem in battle, all of those things. He sent the decoy under the leadership of Abu Qatada. This was in the beginning of Ramadan in the 8th year of the Hijrah. Now that the Prophet ﷺ is amassing these troops, they end up being 10,000. So it's quite a large number of people for the numbers that we've been talking about in the Sirah. One of the Muhajirun, one of the people that had come to Medina from Mecca with the Prophet ﷺ, he was a Sahabi. His name was Hatib ibn Abi Balta' radiallahu anhu. And Hatib was from the people that fought in the Battle of Badr. And remember that the people that fought in the Battle of Badr, they have a special rank amongst the companions. These are our most seasoned war veterans. These are the people that fought with valor and distinction, and I'm using our modern language so we can draw comparisons. They have received the highest national distinction there is possible for service to the nation. Okay, you have to understand that when we talk about the people of Badr, that's who we're talking about. These are people that stood on the line when they had everything to lose. Hatib sends a message with a young servant girl to his family in Mecca to inform them of what's about to happen. Even though the Prophet ﷺ is saying, we have to keep this under wraps, he sends the decoy. So he has from revelation, the Prophet ﷺ, that this is happening. So he sends two of the companions after this girl. And the Prophet ﷺ says, you will find her in this place, etc. So they find her, and they trap her, and they find out that in one of the braids of her hair, she has spun in the braid this letter. So she pulls out the letter, they come back to Medina riding with the letter, and they show it to the Prophet ﷺ. This is a form of treason, to inform the people of Mecca that the Prophet ﷺ is marching. This is a serious crime, especially under the circumstances that we've been discussing. Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu, he's ready to, carry out the execution, already. Boom, quick justice. He doesn't have to think about anything. So the Prophet ﷺ tells Umar, but he is from the people of Badr. And you don't know, maybe Allah Ta'ala has looked at the people of Badr and say, do what you want for the rest of your life, you are forgiven. This teaches us this lesson that, we don't throw out everything if somebody makes a mistake. Yes, this is a grave mistake, but this is the mistake of no ordinary companion. This is the mistake of somebody, a veteran of the Battle of Badr. So he has a type of immunity. He has a type of special honor. He has the gratitude of the nation on this person. Yes, it's a crime, but he makes tawbah, and the Prophet ﷺ accepts his tawbah. This is a really important lesson from the Sirah about this, especially as we come to talk about, and there's no way to make comparison whatsoever, but we come to talk about how a lot of times our ulama and our leaders, meaning our religious leaders, they say things that people don't like, and how they are treated and shamed and cursed and attacked and things like that. And we forget all the khair, all the goodness that they do, etc. And I don't want to speak too much on a tangent, but there are so many people in this country alone who have done so much for this faith and the English language, the English-speaking Muslim world. And they might say something that people don't understand, and they have been excommunicated, as it were, from the community for decades. Right? But this is not the way of the Prophet ﷺ. This is not how we solve our differences. So the Prophet ﷺ confiscates this letter, so there's no leakage of information or intelligence. The people of Mecca have no idea what's about to happen. So there are 10,000. They leave Medina to Mecca. As they arrive right outside of Mecca, they're camping. Remember, it's Ramadan, so they stop, they break their fast. Al-Abbas, the uncle of the Prophet ﷺ, is riding around on the donkey of the Prophet ﷺ, and he meets with Abu Sufyan. So Abu Sufyan is, he's pleading with him again. Al-Abbas is like, something, give me something. So he's like, look, why don't you take the donkey and go to the Muslim side and go find the Prophet ﷺ. And when everyone sees you riding the donkey of the Prophet ﷺ, they'll know that you're safe, that you must have been sent for or something like that. So he gives him the donkey of the Prophet ﷺ, and he does this. And Abu Sufyan goes into the Muslim encampment and he finds the Prophet ﷺ, and he's pleading, and he's pleading. So the Prophet ﷺ, there's a little bit of tough love. He kind of like left him hanging. But see, the hikmah, the wisdom in this is now the Prophet ﷺ, he goes beyond all of the things that Abu Sufyan is saying. So look what he says. The Prophet ﷺ said, isn't it time for you to bear witness that there is no God but Allah? In other words, forget about all this stuff that you're concerned about. After everything that you've been through, after everything that you have seen, isn't it time for you to say La ilaha illallah? He says, La ilaha illallah. I mean, yeah, you're right. So he says, isn't it time for you to testify that I am the messenger of Allah? He's like, but in my heart, that's hard. Because it's a nafsi thing, because that's like going for me to declare that I lost, when I was wrong. But he does it, and he says the shahada. And when you read about Abu Sufyan, this was the arch enemy of the Prophet ﷺ. After this day, it is said in his biography that he never lifted his face in the presence of the Prophet ﷺ ever for his entire life. Out of awe and love and respect for the Prophet ﷺ. So this is now the Prophet is teaching us a lesson in victory. How you deal with your enemy in victory when now everything is at his disposal. Right now, the Prophet can do whatever he wants from the point of view of power. And this is how he treats the leader of these people. So the companions, they say, Ya Rasulullah, Abu Sufyan, he's a flashy guy. He likes flashy things. You got to give him something more than just this shahada. You have to give him something. So the Prophet ﷺ says, whoever enters the house of Abu Sufyan, he's safe. So now Abu Sufyan, he can ride back. I'm going to save my people. See, the Prophet ﷺ is giving him something to raise him amongst his people, even though technically he lost. And he could have taken him as his prisoner. But the Prophet ﷺ sends him back to Mecca. Tell the people that if you go into the house of Abu Sufyan, you're safe. So now Abu Sufyan is going to be the source of the safety of his people, of his nation. The Prophet ﷺ enters Mecca on Tuesday, the 17th of Ramadan, in the 8th year of the Hijrah. There are many groups of the Sahaba as they march in, and each group has some kind of flag or banner of Medina or flag or banner of the Prophet ﷺ. The main one was with Sa'd ibn Ubadah, and as Sa'd was entering into Mecca, he's happy. We're victorious. The city has fallen to us without even the shed of any blood. So he says, "Al-yawmu yawmul malhama." He says, today is the day of bloodshed. So Abu Sufyan, he's startled. He thought he negotiated this sort of deal. So he goes to the Prophet and he says, look what Sa'd is saying. He's saying, today is the day of bloodshed. Malhama. Are you going to kill us? So the Prophet ﷺ says, Kadaba Sa'd. Sa'd has lied. But in the language of Quraysh, Kadaba means akhta'a. He means he made a mistake. It doesn't mean that he lied as in like a lie, but he's made mistaken. He said, Al-yawmu yawmul marham. Today is the day of mercy. Today is the day that Allah has elevated the people of Quraysh. Look at the language. He is talking about the people who have fought him, kicked him out of his home, hurt him, humiliated him, lied about him, tried to assassinate him, tortured his community. All of these things that we've been talking about, all these lectures, the Prophet ﷺ enters in their home victorious and says, today Allah has honored you, has raised you, has given you victory. Think of the psychology behind what the Prophet ﷺ is saying and how this is going to be interpreted by the people of Mecca when you're hearing this. So the Prophet ﷺ gives the flag to Sa'd, son Qais. So it's sort of like a mild, rebuke. Don't say that. Say, we're not going to kill anyone. What are you talking about? It's Ramadan and we're fasting and we won. What else do you want? We just want to make tawaf. This whole thing is started because they wouldn't let us make tawaf inside. That's how simple it was. So the companions, they entered in Mecca. At this time, there were like a north gate and a south gate. So they enter from different sides. Everywhere they enter, they plant the flag. This means we won. This means this is our territory. Even now, the flag is very important. So this is like what we say, raising the flag. So they've raised the flag of the Prophet ﷺ into Mecca. Mecca is now part of Islam. It's part of Medina. It's part of the Prophet ﷺ. As the Prophet ﷺ entered, he did not enter in ihram. He was wearing his normal clothes and he was wearing a black turban. So he makes his tawaf on his camel. And as the Prophet ﷺ entered, the descriptions, the hadith describing this, say that the Prophet ﷺ was so low that his beard almost touched the neck of the camel, out of humility for this place and what it stands for. This is how the Prophet ﷺ enters. He doesn't enter, sword in hand, with this like aura of I'm victorious. But he's entering and all he's thinking about is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He enters, he does his tawaf, and then the Prophet ﷺ enters the Kaaba. And he prays in the Kaaba. The Prophet ﷺ entered the Kaaba 3 times in his life. The first time, this time he prayed 2 rak'ahs. The next time he went, he prayed 8 rak'ahs, 2 in each direction. And then the third time he entered the Kaaba, he kind of felt upset. And the ulama take from this that while it's onerous for people to enter the Kaaba, those of us that are lucky to do that, it's not necessarily something that is to be sought out. It happens or it doesn't happen. Now remember, when the Prophet ﷺ is making his tawaf and praying inside the Kaaba, there are still these idols around. So the Prophet ﷺ destroys the idols with his stick. He points it, جَاءَ الْحَقُّ وَزَهَقَ الْبَاطِلُ إِنَّ الْبَاطِلَ كَانَ زَهُوقًا. Truth comes and falsehood goes. The nature of falsehood that it goes. And the Sirah teaches us that this happened by itself. The Prophet ﷺ would just point with the stick and then the idol would crumble. That he didn't have to physically destroy it. So the Prophet ﷺ now cleansed. Now think about that. That means all of these years that we've been talking, all of these months, all of these prayers from the Muslim community, both in Mecca and Medina, they were praying towards the Kaaba as it was full with all of these idols. That's like a fact that sometimes we don't think of. That the Prophet ﷺ, I don't want to say tolerated, but in a way coexisted with that situation until the time was right for him to cleanse the Kaaba of those idols. The Prophet ﷺ was searching for Uthman ibn Talha, who was the companion who had the key to the Kaaba. And the Sahaba said, why don't you keep the key? So the people of Quraysh and Banu Hashim, they'll have everything. They'll have the key to the Kaaba, they'll have Zamzam. The Prophet ﷺ said, no, today is the day in which we honor everyone's rights. And he gave the key to Uthman ibn Talha, and he said, this key is yours and your family's until the day of judgment. No one except a crooked person, a zalim, will take this key from you. Until today, this is the family that preserves the key of the Kaaba in Mecca. Sayyidina Bilal climbs the Kaaba, he calls the adhan. These are all the signs of victory. The flags, the tawaf, the opening of the Kaaba, the cleaning of the Kaaba from the idols and the images that were inside the Kaaba. There were like images attributed to like Abraham and Ismail doing all of these divinations, and the Prophet ﷺ, this is a lie, they never did this. So cleaning the Kaaba, the call to the adhan, the prayer, these are all the signs of Islam that make Mecca now part of this political body that we began in Medina. Throughout this story, this whole episode takes 19 days. So a little shy of 3 weeks, the Prophet ﷺ is there. And all of the things that happen are all of these teachings and establishing the rules and the regulations to realign people in Mecca towards Islam. One of the things that happens during this episode is that there were 9 people that were executed. And the 9 people that were executed because of previous crimes, previous capital crimes that they had committed. But other than those 9, nobody was affected, no one was harmed in Mecca, nor was anyone forced to convert or any of that kind of stuff that people might think. One of the people that was supposed to be executed was Ka'b ibn Zuhair. But Ka'b, he fled. And later, he goes to Medina to declare his tawbah. And his tawbah is this beautiful poem called Banat Sa'ad, which is the famous original Burda poem. So after Ka'b came to Medina and declared his Islam and declared his tawbah in this really beautiful poem, it's a poem that is used as a study for the beauty of the Arabic language till today. The Prophet ﷺ took off his cloak and he put it on Ka'b. So the Prophet ﷺ accepted the tawbah of Ka'b. And this happens around this time. The Prophet ﷺ is establishing law and order. And then he starts taking the allegiance from the people of Quraysh. So the people come one by one, both men and women, and they take the oath of allegiance, the bay'ah, with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is the famous story of Hind, the wife of Abu Sufyan. She was embarrassed to show herself to the Prophet, so she kind of covered her face, and she came to give the allegiance, and the Prophet recognized her voice. So he's like, do you allegiance that you only worship Allah, that you're not gonna worship any false idols, etc. You're not gonna kill your kids, all the basic stuff that's in the verses of the Quran, and you're not gonna steal. And she said, but Abu Sufyan is a stingy guy, meaning I gotta take something from him. So then the Prophet said, okay, you can take. But only as much as you need. And this is a big fiqh lesson, because this issue happens, people will come now and they'll say, can I take money from my husband, or my, doesn't spend on me, or do I have to tell him? And, these issues come up in the discussions of marital life. Definitely don't want to get into that now. But everyone knows that story. And this is the time where it happened, at the time of the bay'ah from the people of Quraysh. The other major thing that the Prophet ﷺ wanted to take care of during this time period, during these 19 days, is there were, let us say, headquartered temples to some of the Arabian gods around Mecca still in existence. So the Prophet ﷺ wanted to go and take care of that. He said that's something that we can no longer coexist with. So he sends all of these little military groups out to destroy those temple is really, there weren't really temples, they're just these places in the desert where they said this is where this God lives and this God lives, and the Prophet doesn't want to take care of that. So he sends Khalid ibn Walid to Al-Uzza. So the Khalid ibn Walid, he rides out and then he comes back, and the Prophet says, did you see it? He said, see what? He's like, you didn't see it, go back. So he goes back, and like this crazy lady, she emerges out of nowhere, she's naked and she's screaming, like that. So Khalid ibn Walid, she attacks him, so he kills her. He goes back and he tells the Prophet something. He's like, yeah, that was an Uzza. That's how they worship these idols. It's sort of like an oracle of sorts or something like that. So very, very weird stories. So this happens during these 19 days. Amr ibn al-As goes to Sawa'. Sa'ad ibn Zayd goes to Al-Manat. These are the aliha, the gods that they worship, and these are the names you find in some of the verses of the Quran. And then the last major thing is that Khalid ibn Walid was sent after he returned from that weird trip that he had. He was ordered by the Prophet ﷺ to go to Banu Juthayma for da'wah purposes, to teach them, to instruct them into Islam. But when Khalid went, he took these people prisoners and then he executed his prisoners. So when he came back and he informed the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet ﷺ said, he turned to the heavens, he said, I am free from what Khalid did. He's like, this is not what I sent you to do. This was a huge mistake. He's telling Khalid ibn Walid, this is not why we're here. It's not about, we won, it's over. Now it's about da'wah, it's about the deen. We have to teach these people. This concludes the 19 days, and then they return, or they will begin to return. We'll talk about Hunayn and all of these other battles as we draw near to an end of the Sirah, inshaAllah, wallahu ta'ala a'lam. Any questions? about this or anything else? Yes. You have to turn up the volume. Lala, I can't hear at all.
I say, when you say that Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he came to Makkah, when he was doing his tawaf, there was some island inside the Kaaba. I don't understand. So the Kaaba system is the God don't worship idols. That's why.
Yeah, there were idols when the Prophet ﷺ came to Mecca. In this, the 8th year of the Hijrah, there were still idols inside and out, over 360 idols inside and outside the Kaaba. This whole time, from the time the Prophet ﷺ was born until this time, the Kaaba was surrounded by these idols.
So when he got Makkah, when he got Makkah, he was doing tawaf. He wasn't out anymore inside. So that was his second.
There were idols, and then he finished the tawaf, and then he finished his prayer, and then he destroyed the idols. That's my point. Yeah, that's why these details are important. You know, the Prophet ﷺ was able to see beyond, this false image. He's not going to let that stop him from, he's not worshiping the idols, of course. That's my point, is that he was able to coexist in a way with that situation until the time was appropriate that he could change it. Sometimes you just have to wait. That's fine. Yes?
And who can enter the Kaaba?
Who enters the Kaaba? Usually foreign dignitaries. They open the Kaaba for them. They can wash it and clean it. I think they do that a couple times a year. So usually you have to be invited by the government to do that. It's pretty crazy when they do that. I mean, it's everyone. It's a crowd, and they have a lot of security. It's very. I mean, I've seen it opened. One time I was making tawaf, and it's an intense situation. Yes.
You said Prophet Sallallahu did the tawaf on a camel. Do they allow? I mean, can he do it?
Can you do tawaf now on a camel?
I mean,
yeah, I'm not worried about you.
No, because sometimes back I saw someone was doing on a Segway.
Segway, yeah. So you can make tawaf and sa'i on a motorized, wheelchair or a car. Technically you could do that.
Because some imams, they were laughing at him, and I got a clip of that one. They were showing it and laughing.
I mean, the Sharia would allow something like that, but I don't think the authorities there would allow that. So please don't go and say this is the Sunnah and I have to do tawaf on the camel. And, we won't see you again. But from the point of view of fiqh, can you make tawaf and sa'i in a car or a train or a Segway or a bicycle? Yeah, you can. You don't have to walk on your feet. But I mean, logistically now that's probably impossible. The wheelchairs, of course, yeah, for people. But the tawaf is difficult. But at the side, they have a special lane in the middle for the wheelchair.
The tawaf in the upstairs.
I think, yeah, there's a special lane, I think, upstairs for them. Maybe one day they'll add Segways, I guess. Segway, Umrah. Umrah in 15 minutes. You know when you finish, maybe. It's like a premium. You have to pay a premium to do the 15-minute Umrah.
So you mentioned that when they entered, they planted flags from the various gates. Have these gates any significance to Umrah or Hajj? People enter through.
The gates, the ancient gates of Mecca, I don't know if they're still marked. That I would have to look into. I'm sure there must be some kind of landmark now. But Mecca, the Mecca that we see today is so much bigger than the Mecca we're talking about in the Sirah. There was a northern gate and a southern gate. One was called Quda and one was called Kida, something like that. I always mix up which one is north and which one is south. I don't know if they're still preserved.
So your main take home from these last 19 days is the mercy that the Prophet exhibited.
Yeah, so the main lesson of this conquest of Mecca is that the Prophet ﷺ, first of all, he was forced into this. I mean, he did not choose to do this. The Qurayshis violated the treaty. But because of the way they violated it, he had to take action. But instead of taking action by fighting Mecca, he said, we're just going to go and it's over. Like it's ours now. And he did it in such a way as honoring the people of Mecca. So rather than coming and turning these people into prisoners or losers or vanquishing the city or laying siege to cities, all these things that we hear and we read about throughout history, he's like, we won together. He turned it into like a double victory. And that's why they gave allegiance. They gave their allegiance to the Prophet ﷺ because they saw all of these things. They saw the murder. They've never seen anything like that before. He could have exacted all sorts of retribution for all of the, hell that they put him through for these last, several years. But rather than do that, he went beyond all of that. He forgave all of that. And he said, today is a day that Allah has honored you, the people of Quraysh. And by returning all of the rights to the different families, the rights of Zamzam, the key of the Kaaba, he's also establishing law and order that they are going to govern themselves. Politically. Religiously, yeah, this idol business is not going to work. But from a political point of view, yeah, you guys govern yourselves. You're in charge of the Zamzam, stay in charge of the Zamzam. You're in charge of the Kaaba, stay in charge of the Kaaba. I'm not here to change any of that. But this idol business is not going to work. So, very magnanimous, in his victory, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and generous and merciful, and many lessons for us to think about. A lot of times we want revenge. It's human. It's human to want revenge, but there's a huge cost you pay for that. Yeah, but the story of the Black Stone was before the descent. And now we're talking about, after all of these series of battles and bloodshed and prisoners and this and that, for the Prophet ﷺ to finally have this opportunity he could have erased these people, but he lifted them instead of that. Yeah.
What is the color of the Prophet's flags?
White.
You mentioned that Rasulullah prayed 3 times inside the Kaaba. And the last one, can you elaborate on the last one? He said something was geared up. And also now, on the picture, when we see it inside, there's only one place one direction of the rug.
Yeah, so the spot inside the Kaaba now that is marked, this is where the Prophet ﷺ prayed in this time of the Sirah, where he entered for the first time and prayed. The second time the Prophet ﷺ entered the Sirah, he prayed 8 rak'ahs, 2 in each direction. Because inside the Kaaba, there is no direction. Anywhere you pray, it's one of those unique fiqh things that they teach you, that you can pray in any direction. And then the third time, I can't remember the exact wording of the hadith, but it's a strange thing where he felt restricted when he entered. It wasn't like what you would assume that, mashallah, that Kaaba is amazing. He didn't feel like that. He kind of felt restricted. And the ulama understood from that it's not desirable to want to go inside the Kaaba. Because maybe the Prophet ﷺ did that to teach us that had he shown this great excitement, we would have all thought that we have to sunnah, we have to go do it, and it would become too much, and there's no way that the Kaaba can accommodate all these people. So there's a hikmah in that it's not something that, it happens, okay, it happens. It doesn't happen, it's not a big deal. We're not worshiping the Kaaba. It's just the direction of the prayer. We're worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that kind of thing.
You also mentioned that one family had the keys for the Kaaba. And you also mentioned Zamzam. Right now, are there families who are in charge, or is it the custodians?
So the Zemzem and the key of the Kaaba is still in the same family, but it's a ceremonial task. You know, they work with the authorities, and then they'll bring them out. It's actually, I've seen it once. You know, the mimbar that they use in Mecca, I think it moves by remote control. It has wheels. So they wheel the guy in on the mimbar with this remote control, and then, you know, kind of like ceremoniously opens the door. And so that's there. As for Zemzem, Zemzem is a little bit more complicated because Zemzem, there are many families. So my family is one of the families of the Zemzem families in Mecca. And what they've done is they've my mother's family, that is, they've organized them in a like a type of government authority, and the government runs it. But because these families have rights to the Zemzem that are ancient, they include them in some of the decision-making process, and they'll play like a ceremonial role. They'll meet the people at the airport and they'll pour for them the Zemzem and to greet them and things like that. But the Zemzem is so elaborate now that you have to have the government to be able to do that. But they try to maintain these ties a little bit. But I don't know if they'll be able to keep it. I think these things will be under threat.
So, in Mecca, when we drink water from those cans, that's also Zamzam water?
Yeah, all of those water containers in both Mecca and Medina, that's all Zamzam. But there's no way families could maintain that. I mean, it's a huge, huge task. They're constantly replenished. The cold and the lukewarm and the used cups and the new cups, and it's a huge task. So the government really has to oversee that. But there is a union of the families that are still there, and they meet, and so I'm told. Anything else about this or anything else?
The only thing with the best diplomacy, because diplomacy made the people safe, and when he was trying to do the diplomacy when they were doing the black stuff, they really get one.
Yes, the Prophet ﷺ was the best diplomat. He was mercy. He was all mercy and love. That's the issue. If mercy and love occupies the person from the inside, then that stuff becomes doable. Is it Esha time?
Isha is at 9.
9? Oh wow. Okay. My timing was very off. I'm sorry. 9. Anas is confirming 9. Okay, the stuff that we talked about before the class, is that clear? Or are people still uncomfortable with that?
Could you just go back to today's remark, for those who missed the first part, just repeat what you.
Okay, who was not at Jummah today? Oh wow. Okay. So the khutbah today, and I think that I was a little I could have been more clear. So I'm going to be more clear now. Want to record it? No, there's no need for this. I mean, I'll record it the audio.
No, I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, you have to make me look good, so just turn it off.
Turn it off?
Turn it off. So, but the khutbah was recorded.